Hey everyone, welcome back to My Rising Rose. As you'll be able to see from the background around me, I'm doing something different today. Today I wanted to start like a reaction series, and the reason that I want to do that is because I haven't seen anybody doing spirituality reaction videos, and I think it can be quite valuable because I get a lot of comments about people who feel like they're unable to discern like the qualities of a spiritual teaching or a spiritual teacher. And I think by sharing my perspective, which is someone who's been going through spiritual awakening for about 12 years, and that being quite an intense and rapid spiritual awakening in that time, I've been trained by a modern mystic for 5 years, and when I say trained, I mean I was actually interacting regularly with my teacher Fran, so that I've got some like insider knowledge into the spiritual scene. Like I have more awareness of what teachers are like when they're not presenting themselves just to the public, so what they're like behind closed doors, and sometimes that doesn't always match up. And because of the awakenings that I've been through Kundalini awakening and uh, a lot of the textbook kind of awakenings of the witness, unity consciousness, cosmic consciousness, like all of these kinds of things that are pretty textbook, I've got a pretty good understanding of when someone is at a certain stage, and I can see that, and I can talk about that, and I can talk about the pros and cons of that. So I thought this would be an interesting thing to do because I'll be able to talk about what these teachers are talking about, maybe explain some of it a little bit, explain it from my perspective, and just kind of throw in a few ideas that I have, which I hope will pass on some of the knowledge that I've gained about spirituality and the spiritual scene. And maybe together we can explore some interesting teachers and find out the good things that they have to offer, and also some of the limitations. Obviously, I'm also a limited person, so I'm coming to this and I'm going to obviously have my own biases, whether they're conscious or they're unconscious. There's going to be some people that I resonate with and some people who trigger me, and I'll try and be as transparent about that as possible, but I won't be able to do that perfectly. So let's dive in. This is the first go at this, so I'm also just figuring out the technical side of things and like how to actually set this up. So I hope you don't mind just like for the time being just seeing me in the corner of the screen like this. Once I've kind of sussed it out a bit better, you'll be able to see me properly. I can do some stuff in editing or whatever, but for now we're going to keep it simple. I put a post up on Instagram asking people if they would be interested in this for a start, because I'm aware that like it could be divisive, and I'm really not coming into this like with the desire to be really critical, because I wouldn't like it if someone was doing that to my videos. That could make me feel really crappy. So and I don't think that's healthy as well, to be coming into this really divisively. Like, there's a few people that I watch on YouTube who have nothing to do with spirituality who do reaction videos, and sometimes that's quite divisive. So that's not my intent. Like, my intent here is to just share my perspective. I hope that I'm skilled enough that I can deal with that with some degree of compassion and wisdom. But I'm a limited human being, and sometimes I'm going to fail at that. So I will try my best. I can be quite opinionated around spiritual stuff. I don't know if that comes across in my videos or not. But in my private life, I can be pretty opinionated, and sometimes, I think I'm too opinionated. So partly my reason for doing this is to help soften some of that in myself. I think I've got some of this stuff that I need to let go of, basically. So, we'll see how how it goes. Hopefully I won't get too annoyed by some of the people that I see and then go on a rant about them. But maybe that's necessary. So we'll see. The point that I'm trying to make is just take everything that I say here with a pinch of salt. The key to all of this is forming your own discernment and having an open mind and being able to kind of see people and understand them, but also form your own perspective. Don't just take my word for it. So we're going to start with one of the suggestions from my Instagram post. I basically asked people, would you like me to do this? And it was a resounding yes. And then, who would you like me to have a look at and talk about? And someone mentioned Byron Katie, and I don't know much about Byron Katie. Like, I know of her, like, quite a long time ago. I think maybe even 10 or 11 years ago, like quite a while ago, like when I was really new to spirituality. Like, I came across her. I'm aware of the work. I think I had practiced it very briefly right near the beginning. I know it's about questioning your thoughts, to share some of my assumptions about what this is going to be about. It's like, I believe that Byron Katie is living life from somewhat of a witness perspective, quite in the ascended direction, and what I would call the element of air, which is quite detached, similar to Eckhart Tolle, and that her work is around disconnecting from thought, seeing thought as the root of suffering, so linked to a lot of Buddhist ideas. And from the little snippets that I've seen of her, seems like she's genuine, like she's genuinely had some kind of awakening into that witness level of reality. Probably not much beyond that. As this is just my honest opinion based on this is based on very little, like just like at a glance. So maybe this will reveal more to me, and I'll change my opinion by the end. And that her work would be really useful for people who are entangled within thoughts and need to let go of some of that, which applies to me. Like I'm getting a bit stuck in my thoughts lately. So this, I'm going to be listening to this with an open heart and seeing if there's some things here that are really going to resonate for me. And I assume that she's coming at this from quite a psychological perspective, in that there's like a mental health aspect to it. So it's not just some kind of esoteric detachment from the human form in order to discover some transcendental freedom, but that is linked directly to mental health and our thought processes. So I think there's going to be like quite a strong psychological theme, kind of counseling theme. These are my assumptions. So let's watch the video together. I'll pause it as we go along, and let's find out what Byron Katie is all about.
So the word.
Just realised I need to put my headphones on. I'm going to pause, and hopefully that'll work. Okay, so you're going to need to bear with me because I'm new to doing it in this way, so I've got some technical issues. Hopefully we are good to go, and I'll be able to edit all this together afterwards. You get to see all this raw. I hope that's exciting to you. Right, let's start the video.
It's a way to identify and question the thoughts that cause all the suffering in the world, all the suffering in your life. I spent 3 years when the work found me just alone in the desert, to just get away from everyone and just be in this hunger to understand. And there is this small little grocery store, and I walk.
First impressions, she's pretty intense. I'm quite an intense person too, so okay, that's cool. But a pretty intense person, that's my impression, but let's get back to it.
can, and near the produce, over by the apples, it was this woman. She had these two large shopping bags, one in each hand. And then I lost all reference, which happened quite frequently for a while. I said, "Would you hold me, please?" And she put these bags down immediately. And she wrapped her arms around me. And she started rocking me and sang me a lullaby. And that's a friendly universe. And that's how I experience every human being, every cat, dog, and tree. It's who we are without our story.
Beautiful, lovely experience. Like, she's clearly like having some kind of like a spiritual dissociation, but like I mean that in like a genuine way. Like, she's not the person, and she's like sort of dissolving into spirit, and the cognitive mind isn't functioning properly. That's what it sounds like to me. It reminds me of an experience that I had maybe 10 years ago in London, and I was on the train coming back from work, and it was busy, and everybody was holding on to like the guardrails or the rails in the train, and I was looking at the rails with all the hands on it, and I didn't know which hand was mine. Like everything seemed like it was mine, everything was me, and it sounds like there's some similarities there, like she's going more into the air-like witness space, like of dissolution, rather than unity, it sounds like. But then she's also talking about unity. She's saying that she experiences everyone like this woman, like everyone is friendly. Everyone, I can't remember exactly what she said, but like along the lines of friendly and loving. I doubt that, like, because we're human beings, so we have variability in the way that we experience people. She might be experiencing some kind of underlying sense of love within everything. But, some human beings do treat, like, no matter how awake you are, there's going to be some human beings that do not treat you well, right? They do not treat you with friendliness. So even if you're kind of deeply in touch with the underlying like spiritual reality of our unity and love and peace and all of these lovely things, that doesn't mean that everybody is going to treat you in a friendly way. And I do question whether she really perceives everything like that. If you've been on the channel for a while, you'll know that I've recanted this story that Fran said like quite a few times. Fran, my teacher, like I was mentioning at the beginning of the video, and she used to get a lot of things about this, like, oh, when you're enlightened, like everything is love and peace, and it's always like that forever. And she'd be like, I mean, that's not what I've experienced, and it's not true of anyone that I've encountered. So she would then like draw upon the stories of the Buddha, like as an example of this, and also Jesus, who are generally considered to be two of the most enlightened humans who have ever lived. I mean, you've got your own opinion, you're welcome to it, but I think generally people feel that way. And she told this story of the Buddha, which I don't think many people know, like I didn't know it. But when he was traveling around teaching, he had a very close friend who became very jealous of him. So jealous, in fact, that one day he decided that he would stand on a cliff and try and push a boulder onto the Buddha, to unalive the Buddha. And it was a near miss, and the Buddha's foot got broken by this boulder. And Fran would like sort of have a bit of a smile at the edge of her cheeks, and she'd be like, I don't think that was a good day for the Buddha. And I wonder if Byron Katie was in the same position, if you know, a very close friend of hers tried to push a boulder on her out of malice, you know, not as a joke or anything, like really full of malice, and this was a good friend who did this, and I don't think that Byron Katie would be thinking that person was full of friendliness and that's how I experienced that person. Right? That's my opinion. She can try and prove me wrong with that. I would be very curious what her response would be. I would struggle to believe that personally, because it just doesn't sound human, and awakening doesn't stop you from being human.
I think people would describe me as ordinary, and there's nothing about me that would stand out. So I had a very usual life: high school, couple of years of college, married, then 3 children, and then divorce, and then married, and then a depression hit. It was so deep, so dark, so nonstop. I spent years, more than a decade, of an agoraphobic experience, terrified of leaving my home. Often I couldn't leave my bedroom. Life was so painful. For my children, I was so full of guilt and shame that they would see me that way. It was a horror. It was a prison with no way out.
Sounds horrible. I'm sure some of you will relate to that. I know I can relate to that. I appreciate her sharing the authenticity of her experience there, like the reality of that. She seems very open, and you can see the sadness in her eyes. Like it feels like she's got a sense of compassion for her former self. 10 years or more being in a state like that, that's really hard. If it's so severe you can't even leave your room, it's really bad. I think it's interesting that my impression of her was that she's someone who's had this like witness consciousness awakening and an ascended air-like awakening. And I wonder sometimes if our desire, whether we're conscious of it or not, our desire to ascend and leave our body and become something else, not the body, not human, not any of that pain and suffering from the past. You know, I wonder sometimes if there's a bit of a defense mechanism there. And I don't know if this is true of Byron or not. Like, maybe we'll see as the video goes on. But something I've seen in people and that I recognize in myself to some degree, especially early on when I was awakening, was that I was seeing awakening as an escape from the reality of my human life and the challenges of human life, the challenges of being truly embodied as a human being. And I'm wondering whether my assumption that she might be in this kind of witness, kind of spiritual dissociative state might be linked to the intense degree of pain that she's been through. Not necessarily, and I'm curious to see what else she talks about. Let's go.
Then one day, my husband brought me to this halfway house recommended by this doctor. I was introduced to 3 women, and they said I frightened them to the point that they didn't want me in the house. But they said there is an attic, and it would be better if I stayed there. And I was just a yes to everything. I was in this surrendered state. My self-esteem was so low, I didn't believe I even deserved a bed to sleep in.
Just going to say, there's a lot of different ways that you can use the word surrendered. That to me doesn't sound like a surrendered state in a spiritual sense. That sounds to me like helplessness, which is often spiritual surrender and helplessness are often kind of confused, because people will say things like, "Oh, just surrender," and it's like, well, what, I know, like, I'm going to stand up and fight. But generally, when someone's talking about a deep state of spiritual surrender, it's not giving up, as in giving up the will to live and fight, which sounds something like what she's talking about. It means you are completely like in line with everything that is. You're completely flowing with everything. So that's something different. And I just wanted to point out there that the difference in the word surrender and the way that she's using it here.
One day, as I lay sleeping on the floor, a cockroach ran over my foot. And I opened my eyes, and before the ego could intervene in that space, I saw how my entire world was created. Ego naming things I was seeing: light, window, ceiling, walls, naming the unnameable. Prior to that, there was no identification. There was no I, there was no world. I was seeing this body as it. It stood up. It walked. And just out the door, it faced a mirror. And
sorry to keep interrupting, but it's important to give some points here. That does sound completely like spiritual dissociation, like if referring to the body as it. That to me, that sounds like total dissociation. And there's clearly something spiritual going on, like she's realizing something fundamental about the nature of reality. But to me, if we were just to stop this experience here and she just stays in this for the rest of her life, that's not balanced, healthy, and integrated, in my opinion. It's kind of in a sense, these things can be like a get out of jail free card. You kind of you can kind of move through your life to some degree, free from some of the pain and suffering of your body, but that doesn't mean that you're as kind of deeply evolved and integrated as you could be. But obviously this is right at the beginning of the story, so there could be way more to go.
Looked into the depth of those eyes, and it was as though I met myself. Love happened.
Great. Love that. That's lovely. Yeah, totally. That's really nice. Like, okay, so it's like awareness seeing awareness through her eyes. It's like, oh, I'm the divine, That's wonderful. Like, that's beautiful. For me personally, I resonate a lot more with that, because I'm much more of like I think of myself as quite a sort of passionate person. I quietly passionate though. The figure that I most resonate with, like out of historical figures, is Jesus. Like, he's the one I resonate with the most, whereas the sense that I'm getting from her is she's more of a Buddha kind of person. So I love this kind of stuff, as long as it's grounded.
I saw that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered. And when I didn't believe them, I didn't suffer. My husband and children came to get me, and the shift...
Sorry, I've got to do it again. I don't resonate very much with that. Again, like that, to me, that's this more like ascended path, air path. If you're someone who like resonates a lot with that, and you've got a lot of that element, then great. If you're resonating with this, don't let me put you off. But the risk there is that we can start thinking all thoughts are bad, or like it's bad to have thoughts about things, or it's bad to have identities, and that's not how I see it. Like, I think sometimes we can get stuck in thought patterns, and I recognize that in myself. I've been getting stuck in negative thought patterns lately, been doing my head in. So, I like that kind of freedom. But like with anything, we can take it too far. And if we start taking that too far, we'll start going into places where we might kind of develop a subtle sense of dislike for our bodies and minds, a kind of rejection of our body and mind and our humanity. It's an idea like that as well, when you're just kind of hearing somebody else recanting their natural experience as it arose, and then you try and force your mind into that place. You can damage yourself pretty badly trying to force yourself into places like that. Like, I've had periods where I've got really confused because I've been trying to really kind of follow what someone like Byron Katie's talking about here, like kind of thinking that that's like the way out of all of my suffering, and if I can just force myself to have an experience like she had, then I'll be okay. That's not how I see like a healthy spiritual awakening these days. I see it much more awakening into our bodies and minds and humanity, and like a reshaping of our body, mind and humanity so that it's a mature human being. That's personally what my goal is. Obviously I'm a flawed human being, and I've got my limitations with that, but on the whole, over the past 5 years especially, I've matured so much as a human being, and that's reflected in my relationships and the way that I live my life. So to me, that's more important than some kind of magical spiritual pill where we kind of get to escape from all the pain and suffering. I don't buy it personally, but I think we can have brief reprieves through things like this. And for some people, who are different to me, they're more predisposed to this, then they might have that and just stay in it for the rest of their life, and that's great. But I don't think it will necessarily carry on into the next one. I think they might be brought back to earth. Let's just say that.
They experienced in me, it was unrecognizable. I didn't know I had my family until I was being identified. I'm a woman. I have a husband. I have 3 children. I have a home. I'd start to walk out the door, this agoraphobic, and my husband would say something like, "Where do you think you're going, Kate?" And I would just think that is one of the most amazing questions I've ever heard. Where the hell do I think I'm going? The excitement of the don't know, I have no idea. In the desert, the wind can blow hard for several days, and I loved it. The adventure of meeting the world. It was just falling in love with everyone and everything. People would say, there's this crazy woman that talks about making friends with the wind. But other people would call and say, "Can you help me?" And obviously their minds were open. I'd say yes. I would just listen to them talk, and they would tell me their problems. Like, my husband left me, or there's something wrong with me, or I'll never find work. I've got cancer. I'm dying. I ask 4 questions. The first one is it true? And then the next question is, can you absolutely know it's true? And then, how do you react when you believe the thought? And then that 4th question, Who are you without the thought? Suffering, I've come to see, it's optional. But to any...
Sorry. It's very sweet. It's very sweet. She seems genuine. Suffering is optional. That's a strong statement. That's a strong statement. I'd like to follow her around. So it sounds weird. I'd like to follow her around when she's not being filmed or anything, and just see the way that she actually lives her life. And if there are any moments when she does actually struggle with something and suffer. Because, I've heard so many people say things like that they just don't suffer anymore. And I used to believe that kind of stuff, really early on, but it never proved to be true. There's quite a famous spiritual teacher who I didn't have much of an opinion of, but my teacher Fran, she saw one of his talks, and he was talking about how someone asked him this question. They're like, if your wife left you for another man, what would you do? And he sort of sat there, and he's a similar kind of Buddha-y type person. He was like, well, I would wish them well and send them love. And Fran just went, oh, okay, and got up and left. Because she was like, well, this person's obviously deluding themselves and other people. And that she just didn't buy it for a second. And so she was the kind of main person who's helped me kind of navigate the spiritual community and helped burst a lot of my bubbles where I would believe the kinds of things that Byron Katie's talking about here. And more recently, in the last 5 years or so, I became friends with a guy who used to help organize some of the teacher I was just talking about, some of his retreats. And this guy's saying, if my wife left me, I would just feel completely at peace, and I would just wish them well and send them love, like it was nothing at all, just like it's another day, just like drinking a glass of water. This same person who said that, what my friend told me, which maybe he didn't understand the situation correctly, it's just anecdotal evidence. Maybe he didn't like this teacher, and he told me the story and it wasn't true. Take this with a pinch of salt. Obviously, I'm not telling you who that teacher is because I don't want to create any more drama than I'm already going to create through doing these. So this same teacher who had said that they wouldn't react when their wife left them, apparently he'd got off stage and come backstage once at an event, and him and his wife had got into a big argument about something. I don't know what about, but my guess is it's not as severe as her cheating on him and being about to leave him. So I don't know what they were talking about, but if it was enough to make them have an argument, well, that's a lot more than feeling completely at peace and wishing them well and sending them love, right? So maybe if she left him, he wouldn't feel like that. And so that's why, I take all this stuff with a pinch of salt. If someone's just suffering's optional, I never suffer. Okay. I would like to see you at certain difficult moments in your life. I'd like to be on a fly on the wall when your husband leaves you. Or not saying that's going to happen, I don't wish that upon her, but imagine if it did, or heaven forbid a family loved one was, had a terrible accident. Maybe she would react to that. And even if she didn't, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's healthy. Maybe that's okay if you have a reaction to that. that's kind of how I see that stuff. I think it's lovely if she's gone from a state of really deep suffering to a state of like blissful, transcendent spirituality. But for me, that's really not the end point, and there's other things that can happen along the way. And I'd be curious to know from her whether she's experienced those things or what her life is really like. Maybe she's not supposed to. Maybe she's supposed to be this person that she is, and she's sharing this one way of exploring spirituality and spiritual awakening with people that's really helping a lot of people. I've been hearing about it for ages. She's been doing this for a long time, and I think she's been helping a lot of people. But that doesn't mean that, some people that she's kind of helping along the way might also get a bit confused by this message and, potentially hurt by it too. Because, this is the real world, and it's not all flowers and rainbows, which is kind of the sense that I'm getting from her. But I have a different perspective.
One that has the courage to answer the questions. Life is a gift, and anyone can do this work if their mind's open to it.
Okay. Well, that was interesting. Yeah, interesting. What do I have to say? There's some lovely things there, and people like this, for me personally, I find them quite helpful at times. Eckhart Tolle was the first guy that I encountered, like spiritually. Watching one of his videos triggered my spiritual awakening, and everything else that's unfolded since. I'll always be grateful to him and love him for that. From the way that Byron Katie's talking, it could have been Byron Katie that could have triggered that type of awakening, which is like this ascended awakening. Can be really, really valuable. There's times where I just need that in my life. Like I'll go through a week where I'm just watching loads and loads of Eckhart Tolle videos. Usually the same couple of videos, just every night. They're like my sort of go-to. They can crack me out of bad mental habits and kind of clean me up on that air element level. But there's a lot more ways to awaken than that. If that's the only way that you're meant to awaken, like it seems like Byron Katie's supposed to, and like Eckhart Tolle's supposed to, following those teachers just all the way through until you don't need them anymore is probably going to work really well for you. It's not going to work really well for everybody, and for some people it's going to be counterproductive, because if you are more aligned to the elements of water and earth and fire, actually, really, from what she's talking about, you might be called much more into your body, like into the sometimes quite harsh and chaotic reality of being human, which has been my path for like the last 8 years or so. Then if someone's telling you that your thoughts aren't real, and essentially saying like that you should just disregard them, you might end up kind of trying to pull yourself in the wrong direction, and it might create quite a lot of inattention for you, because we all have, you could say, like a karmic path that we're meant to follow as human beings that are aligned to the specific energies that we are made of. And for some of us, that's going to be the opposite of what she's describing. Like I've had times, and I still have times, where I'll kind of get quite gravitated into the kind of language that she's talking about. For me, it's with Eckhart, and I'll be trying to make myself like Eckhart, as if, he just seems to be like free of the suffering and everything's absolutely fine, and I'm going through a really hard time, and I'll like listen to his videos, and I'm like, there are times where that'll provide some relief, and there's other times where it actually makes it considerably worse. And in those times, the only thing that works is for me to stop doing any of that air stuff and completely allow myself to descend descend into the underworld of my experience, which means really meeting it, meeting all of that. The reality of our humanity, of my humanity. And that's, if I tried to follow what she was saying there, I'd miss that. And I don't know Byron Katie's perspective on this, but from what I've observed of teachers like her, they're kind of all or nothing. It's like, it's my way or the highway. I don't mean that they would say it like, but say it like that would be like that harsh. But it's kind of like, this is the way that worked for me, and I found something absolutely incredible through it. It's the only way. Because it's the only way that they've experienced. Eckhart Tolle's like that. If you hear him talking, he'll tell you what enlightenment is, and he'll describe his own experience. And it's like, I don't think that's the whole story. I don't think that's the whole story for all of humanity. I think it's the story for some, and it's also the story for some of us for a specific period of time in our life, but it's not the story for all of us all the time. And what I would love is if teachers like that, maybe Byron Katie, I'd say almost certainly Eckhart Tolle, if they had a more nuanced understanding of the different forms of spiritual awakening, if they were more aware of the descended path of spiritual awakening, it would bring so much happiness to me, because then they could refer to it and say, this is how my awakening has been, this is what has worked for me, this is what's been most important for me, bearing in mind that I'm an air element awakening person, or as my friend would say, a emptiness thread person. And then, you can tell when someone's like a different form. Like I can tell it when I'm talking with people. And then there's some times where I'll just speak to someone and I'm like, this person's an underworld person. And they don't need air meditations. It's probably going to be counterproductive. They need to go into the reality of the lower dimensions. They're like roots in the tree of humanity. And Byron Katie and Eckhart Tolle, they're a bit like leaves. And if you've got a leaf telling you that you're supposed to be a leaf when really you're a root, it's going to end badly. And likewise the other way around. So I think I would love it if these really well-known teachers had a broader understanding of the diversity of possibilities within human awakening and would reference it and give that to people and be like, maybe I don't know that much about this particular part, but I can tell that you're in this thing, and give people what they need, instead of just kind of telling them what worked for us. So thank you all so much for being here. I hope this has all worked. I've been talking for ages. So I hope this has all worked. Hope this was interesting for you. If this is the kind of thing that you'd like me to keep doing, leave a comment below, let me know. If there's someone that you want me to take a look at, let me know. I haven't been watching spiritual videos really for a long time, so there's going to be loads of people I haven't heard of. So leave some references below. Let me know who you'd like me to do videos for. If there's a specific video, please leave it in the comments. I think you can put links in the comments. If you can't, email me. I've got my links in the description below. And I think that's everything. I mean, updates, we've got Dragon Medicine. Well, not Dragon Medicine. We've got the Dragon Library launching next month. And we've got the retreat in Glastonbury from the 7th to the 11th of October. And then the next online live program with me where you'll be able to talk directly to me, ask me questions and ask questions of the beings that I channel, is at the end of October. I'm going to try and time it with Halloween, Samhain, for the beloved goddesses of the enlightened dark. feels quite fitting at the moment for the lighting that I've got in here. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me know. I've enjoyed doing it. So I'll carry on doing them. And yeah, have a great day. Oh, and if you don't resonate with what I'm saying, don't worry. Like, if you don't like what I've just said, that's cool. Like, we're all different. I'm just sharing my perspective. If you're like a diehard, I was going to say Katy Perry, Katy Perry fan. If you're like a hardcore, oh God, what's her name? Byron Katie fan, then, you know, don't give me hate below. Like, it's all cool. You don't have to believe what I'm saying. If she's working for you, go for it. And I reckon there's going to be loads of people that she works for. And there could be moments in my life where I could benefit from dipping into this. It's just, in general, quite a few of the things that she said I really don't resonate with. And I think there are other ways of viewing things that, in my opinion, are a bit more grounded and realistic and human. But, you know, I think she's having a lovely time, so she's not going to mind that I've got this opinion. All right, I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you all soon.